Thank you for connecting today. Blessed is that time. Blessed is that day. Blessed is that hour. Blessed is that some second when we sit together as one universal family of the divine and share some sublime, beautiful, spiritual moments together. For all the wealth that we accumulate in this world, this is the true wealth. Satya Tan. Satya means true, Tan means wealth. Other wealth will come and go. This is true wealth, which will go with you from this life into the next. Today, we shall be talking about the chaos of the mind, man, and how this chaos affects us and what can we do to reduce and eliminate even the chaos. First, I will share with you a story that my master shared with me, and then we shall carry on from there. One day, a mother and father decide to take their only daughter to a fun fair. They established the day, and the child was excited. She had never seen a fun fair before. She would dream, what would it be like in the fun fair? She had heard lots from her friend, but this was her first trip. That day came. And as they were going to enter the fun fair, the father looked at his daughter and said, "My child, there are many attractions here. Keep your focus. Do not let go of my finger. Whatever you do, whatever the temptations, we shall go together. Hold on tight to my finger." The child nods their head, but absolutely excited. And they enter the fun fair. The child is fascinated by what it was observing. It was a new experience. There was music, merriment, many families enjoying a beautiful day, bright colors, beautiful music, beautiful rides, candies everywhere. Everybody was having fun. The child's face lit up seeing all the fun and observing happiness on the child's face. The parents naturally were delighted. Which parent will not be delighted to see the child's face smiling, happy? Suddenly, in all the commotion, the child, their only daughter, loses her father's finger. And in the rush, they get separated. Now, all of a sudden, the fun becomes a nightmare. Everything that put a smile on this child's face is still there. The music is still there. The funfair is still there. The lights are still there. The candy is still there, but her father was not there. The security of her father's finger was no longer there. And the child starts to cry. The smile on her tender face turns into fear, for she is left alone. Those once excited eyes starts to shed uncontrollable tears. The same funfair, the same candy, the same people, the same music. However, in the absence of her father's finger, without the security of her father, this was no longer fun. On hearing the cry of the lost child, some kind person walks up to her, asks her, "My child, what is the problem?" And she says, "I've lost my father." He holds her hand and guides her back to her father. And immediately she finds her peace. And this is a story of our lives. We have so much. However, in this glitz and glamour, we have lost our divine finger of the Father. And that, what was supposed to give us pleasure, has become the very source of our pain and suffering. The divine said, "My child, enjoy this world. My child, enjoy your business. My child, be fruitful. This world is for you. Live in it. But whatever you do not lose your focus. Do not lose my finger." And in divine absence of the soul, we are lost in this chaos of life. And our soul is not at peace. It has everything, but it has lost its security from the divine. And our soul will only find its peace once some kind soul leads it back to its divine Father. Life should have been, could have been so much more fun if we had only listened to our divine master, kept our focus, enjoyed the world, but keep our focus on the teachings of the divine. Enjoy the world, my child, however, do not lose my finger. Yet the divine guidance was lost in the fascination of the glitz and glamour of the illusion of this world. What happens? Why are we in so much chaos? Why have we lost the finger of our divine Father, our only source of peace, our source of security, our source of permanent happiness? Everything that is born from our mind is born from what we call an ignorant mind. The ignorant mind is a mind which is dense, foggy, deluded, and totally engrossed in Maya. As a consequence, that divine Father of ours, who is not just within us, around us, but so close to us, even closer than our own hands and feet. Sadly, such is the ignorance of the mind that this divine Father we have forgotten and could be on another planet. Sadly, the mind, which is now rooted in ignorance, has found an attraction to this world. Understand one thing, the world will change. Many of you will see many changes in your lives. The world is changing and unfolding right in front of us now. Did we ever imagine 4 or 5 years ago that what society is going through now? Our friends will change. Our situations will change. Our health will change. Our relationships will change. Our perceptions will change. All that is that we can see with our sensory interactions all falls into the changeable aspect of nature. Yet only the words of the divine is the only true Shakti, the power which is eternal, changeless, and totally stable. Bani, Prabh ki sabko bole, aap adol, na kabhu dole. The words of the divine is telling everybody, connect with that divine Shakti, whether that be Allah, Jesus, Vaheguru, Buddha, Ram. Because there will be no instability. And those who are attached to this Shabd, the Shakti, will find their balance. They will have been saved. Drifting away from the divine, we develop a very dangerous liaison with Maya. And this becomes a source of all our misery. So the challenge in life for all of us is to first identify the source of our stability and then create that focus which keeps that divine Shakti in our hearts all the time. Wherever we go, the divine goes with us. Tu sabni thai jithe ho jai. My divine love, wherever I go, you are with me. I share a little story with you. I was in Greece. I cannot recall what this is, Acropolis, I think. I'm not sure, but huge, huge tall temple right at the top. And there was a Christian with me, Roberto, his name was. And I think this has got maybe 200 steps, and I'm sitting, I'm looking at, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? Then I decided I can't be bothered. And we met on the cruise that very night, and he says to me, Bahadur, did you go to the top? I says, no. He goes, but I did. I goes, oh. He was 80 years old. And I said, Roberto, how did you manage that at your age? And he said to me, he goes, Bahadur, it wasn't me. Me and Jesus both went together. And I'm shocked. This was going back many years ago. I'm shocked. I'm thinking, the vision of this young man. I called him a young man then. I said, you're young. I feel old. And your vision is amazing. He goes, I said, how did you do it? He said, Bahadur, I took one step and I said to Jesus, Jesus, you take the next step. He goes, I took one, Jesus took the next. I took one, Jesus took the next. And as we were talking, he goes, we got all the way to the top. We had a beautiful time, me and Jesus. And then we came back down. And that night I learned a lot from this man. Tu sabni thai jithe ho jai. The divine is with us. The divine is our support. But yet, in the ignorance, that which is with us, we have created a huge distance, and that which in reality will never be ours, we have just held on to. This becomes the source of our pain, the chaos of the mind. Buddha once said, when this is, that is. From the rising of this comes the rising of that. When this isn't, that isn't. From the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. Such immense wisdom in these few words. What is this? Ignorance. What is that? Perception. From the ignorance comes a perception. My master used to say, Bahadur, have you ever seen a spider? See how it creates a web? And then in its own web, the very same spider gets trapped in the middle. The very same web that the spider has created becomes its own source of trap. So in this ignorance, what Buddha is trying to tell us, we are creating a perception. And what happens to this perception? A fabrication. It leads to a story. And in this story, we become trapped. Not just for one day, not for 1 month, not for 1 year. Many, many lives we go through trapped in the same story. And yet, who is trapped? Who is suffering? Who is feeling? Who is holding on? But in the ignorant mind, we will not realize. In the Sangat of a true Guru, in the Sangat of the divine souls, as the repetition of the Shabd is increased, so will the ignorance of the mind begin to disappear. What is ignorance? Ignorance is that which is impermanent, yet in which exists our total field of emotions and consciousness. That which is not true, which is impermanent by nature, which will come and go like this body, but yet we are holding on to it like it's the truth. In the Sangat of the divine souls, this ignorance that has plagued us will eventually cease. Through the teachings of Guruji, as interpreted by the true, genuine masters, there are plenty of interpretations, but believe me, you have to take interpretation from those who have not just studied, but actually become one with those teachings. Those interpretations will be different. Those interpretations will light a spiritual lamp within us. And as this lamp of divine wisdom begins to lighten, so will our Maya-infested darkness of ignorance begin to disappear. And as our ignorance ceases, so will the perception of the mind begin to cease. And listen, this is the play. Ignorance leading to perception, which becomes a fabrication, creating a story. So therefore, in the Sangat, as we meditate, as we sit with the enlightened, our ignorance will begin to lessen. Binasyo manaka murakti tha prabhaka pahana laga mita. And so will the perception of the mind begin to cease. So the perception ceases, so will the fabrication cease, and so will the stories cease. And so will all our emotions related to those stories cease. Consequently, our conscience will become purer. Understand one thing, when emotions give rise, they come in packs. Not one emotion, packs. And this is why we find very difficult to deal with certain emotions. Your emotions are superimposed upon each other, and they give power to one another. Take an example of a broken heart. Two people madly in love with each other. situation changes. One falls out of love, the other one is still clinging on. That leads to a heartbreak. This heartbreak leads to anger. This anger leads to jealousy. This jealousy leads to bitterness. This bitterness leads us to do those things sometimes that we pay a very heavy price for. A whole sequence of events arising simply from one scenario, and yet a whole host of emotions come into play. One day, the world looks beautiful. Our relations feel like a blessing. Then on another day, the same world becomes dark and pure, and the same relationships become a bane of our pain. Why? Because all that was born from ignorance, that created an appearance, that fabricated a story that was not true. Agyani manuk bhaya jo nahi so loche. Agyani is that person who is completely devoid of divine wisdom. Guruji says, those humans who are devoid of divine wisdom, in their spiritual ignorance, they see things that do not exist. They see, they connect, they attach themselves to things that simply do not exist. Nothing is permanent. Look at yourself. As we're growing older, the clock is ticking, the body is beginning to give, the aches and pains, the vision is disappearing, the hearing is disappearing. Nothing is permanent. Then if nothing is permanent, it follows that all our experience cannot be true and permanent either. And yet we base all our emotions on that which is not permanent. This creates much havoc in our mind, much chaos in our mind. We are focused to that which is impermanent, and yet we try to connect to that which is permanent. Problems. We are focused to that which is impermanent. Our whole focus is on the impermanent aspect of our living. And yet we get up in the morning and we try to connect to something, some higher power, which is permanent. Won't work. We are ignorant. We haven't learned, we haven't understood. Understand one thing, we must live. Life is for living. Enjoy life. Get good education. Run a good business. Get a good job. Go to the gym. Be healthy. Eat well. Drive nice cars. Wear nice clothes. Have beautiful holidays. Go to the restaurants. Nothing wrong with that. But we must master our focus that whilst we are doing all that aspect of our living, we are connected with the divine. In other words, we are holding tight onto the finger of our divine Father. Realize that if there is no cause, then there will be no effect. If there is no ignorance, everything is clear, pure, simple. If there is no ignorance, then there will be no fabrications. The enlightened mind does not fabricate. It doesn't create stories. It understands the play from a much different perspective, from a much deeper perspective. And where there are no fabrications, there will be no perceptions. Perceptions are created when we create a fabrication. Fabrication is created from ignorance. And where there are no perceptions, there will be no stories. No stories. Nothing to gossip about. Nothing to evaluate. Where there are no stories, there will be no desires, no cravings, no problems. Where there are no desires, there will be no emotional distortions. Where there are no emotional distortions, there will be no suffering. Your mind will be still. Where there is no suffering, there will be no stress. Where there is no stress, there will be no complications. That is the beauty of Guru's word. That is the beauty of understanding what the divine teachings, whether they be of the Quran or the Holy Bible or the Gita or the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, whichever, this is what these beautiful spiritual souls are imparting upon us to make our life easy. There will be no conditions in an enlightened mind that will give rise to any aspect of our suffering. An enlightened mind, a mind which is not in ignorance, a mind which is not trying to please two masters, is an uncontaminated mind. It's pure, it's clear, and that is what we call an awakening. Jagarta. One who has understood the ignorance of the mind is an awakened soul. The reality is simple. Our life is simply based on our karmic footprints. And when we experience any emotion, then we must understand that we will have to experience both the good and the bad. Like day follows night, so must happiness follow sadness, and sadness follows happiness. Such is a circle of life. Separating negative and positive emotions are impossible. Dokha, sokha, karta, janama funmua. Dukh, pain, sukh, peace, happiness, pleasure is the way of our living, janam, life. And many lives you go through this cycle. Charana Kamala, only in the divine lotus feet of our Father will we find our peace. Charana Kamala, Gur Asram, Diya, they are inseparable. But only in the divine Lord will we find our peace. So we must have a laser sharp focus on the divine teachings of our Father. In ancient Japan, a mighty war between two clans broke out. Many days this war went on for. There was ferocious stamping of the feet of the horses, the battlefield covered red with blood of the warriors, dust in the air, bodies lying on the battlefield, flashes of sparks flying as metal rubbed against metal, warriors in their battle cries could be heard for miles. Amidst all this chaos, all this blood, an old man sits quietly, attending the damaged swords, repairing them and forging new ones. In all the chaos, in the grips of death, no disturbance of the mind, totally fixated on his job. Soon the war was over. The king called this old man and asked him, "Old man, you have been making swords for 80 years. And yet, whatever the circumstance, whatever your health, you have never slipped in the quality of your sword making. How did you manage this?" The old man lowered his head as a mark of respect and replied, "My lord, my master, ever since I started making swords, my master told me one thing, to keep focus on whatever I was doing. Whatever was happening around me, whatever feelings gave birth inside me, I overlooked them all. I simply focused on the sword. If something did not look like a sword, I paid no interest. All my energy was consumed in the direction of the sword making. I did not waste my energy elsewhere. This reminds me of Babaji. His energy in seva, 24/7, 24/7, 24/7, seva, 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 Simran, 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 seva, Simran. He ended up in a wheelchair, cancer, diabetic, couldn't walk, but the Sangat, the seva, and the Simran was his complete and total energy. This is the energy that is required if you sincerely wish to follow the path of meditation. And understand that there is no greater battlefield than the battlefield of the mind. This focus is absolutely paramount. Everything in the universe has its opposites. This is the experience of life in its fullness. One day you will be poor, poverty, wealth, positive, negative, failure, success, life, death, hot, cold, up and down, night and day. That which makes you happy today will surely make you sad tomorrow. Therefore, if one wishes to rise above the chaos of the mind, if one truly wishes to pursue the path of happiness, then one must understand that there will be a possibility of sadness and there will be possibilities of tears. This is a requisite of human birth. Sorrow, happiness, lamentation, pain, distress, despair, aging, death. There can be no other way. This is the way of the gross body. The only other way is rise above the ignorance. There is no other way. Every other way falls into this system. And every aspect of the universal creation runs under this law. And our challenge is to understand and to be able to flow within this law, live in awareness by simply learning to focus on the divine teachings. And if divine teachings are understood, then implemented, will create much harmony. Why? How? For they will create a type of vision within us that will help us see things simply as they arise, and will result in the ability to put an end to our stress, creating an effortless living and good well-being of our mind, body, and soul. Universal laws by which all life abides by are not there to make us happy, nor to punish us. These laws cannot be broken. The lack of understanding of these laws and our inability to master our focus is the reason for our pain. Hukum na jaane bahut baar ho gaye. Understand that peace in all seasons of life will only come from divine understanding. And the greater the picture of the blueprint of our existence we can understand, the more we will find our peace. There is no peace when we try to understand a snapshot of a feeling of an experience. How will this be created? Over time, this vision will be born from Sangat, Shabd, and Seva, from the true Guru. Vahaire Gurben Sahja na hoy. Without the Guru, intuitive balance is not obtained. At this moment, our emotions are like a pendulum of a clock. Left, right, happy, sad, angry, pleasant, moody, smiling. Understand, if you carry on living like this, eventually your mind will become exhausted tired, and will break down. You will lose the beauty of simply living. And yet we do not listen to the words of wisdom from the divine. And the ones who have understood the value of these teachings of the preordained masters, the teachings of their scriptures, their life experience will neither be good or bad. It will simply be neutral. Simply neutral. No good, no bad. It is. It simply is. Remember, this world is in bondage to attachments, cravings, clingings, obsessions, pains, pleasure. And in this way, we create our karmic footprints. And our karmic footprints creates a loop without an end, which stretches beyond time, round and round, duk-suk, many, many lives. We go through the same loop. As we meditate and serve in the Sanghat, and through blessings of the true Guru, slowly we begin to change our karmic parameters. We will begin to spiritually grow and synchronize into divine awareness. We will create a mental space within us, yielding a result of profound stability of the thought and freedom from the stress. And sometimes our emotions are like a sounding board, which will reflect our vibrations of the thoughts. And if understood, will develop a beautiful growth within us. Sadly for the many, the lack of this understanding creates much distortion and disturbance in the frequency of our thoughts. And in the lower three dimensions, the human mind is totally plagued by such unstable emotions. In the higher consciousness, in the higher dimensions, in the spiritual realm, when we are connected to the divine, we are connected to the matrix of a universal mind. There are no opposites. Everything is happening because it's exactly the way it was supposed to be happening. In this dimension, one will distinguish between good and bad, and will not distinguish between good and bad, right and wrong, happiness or sadness. Not because one loses the ability to make a distinctions, rather, one carries no desires, one does not feel the need to make any distinctions between the polar opposites. We must learn to guide our focus in complete awareness. Even when things seemingly going wrong for us, we must remain focused. And in this way, we will eventually become an external observer to the flow of life. We will become the witness of our own life. So in summary, as humans from time to time, we will become slaves to our emotions. We will experience the volatility of our emotions. However, remember that whichever the emotion or emotions we are going through, when the conditions, as explained earlier, give rise to one another, they will lead to suffering. Why? Because the strength of our focus that we place in them becomes the source of our problem. And the greater the focus in any aspect of the experience, then the deeper and longer the experience will last in our minds. Understand that all fleeting experiences on their lifespans are purely based upon how much focus we put in them. The less focus we put in them, the less the impact. And if we give no focus, then there will be no impact. So therefore, focus on the divine is so important, so important. If you wish to find your harmony and your balance. Our mind, Manatu Jyota Sarup hai. Our mind is our religion. Our mind is the road to our happiness. We must keep focus on the Shabd, keep focus on the Simran, keep focus on the Sangat. Whatever you are doing, at all times, keep your inner dhyan in the Shabd. Keep focus on the teachings of the preordained masters. Keep focus on the thought which is being generated in your mind. Keep focus on your spoken word. And slowly, a process of awakening will begin. And as we start to awaken, everything which is creating suffering within us will begin to cease. Divine knowledge that leads to divine activities, leads to divine blessings, is the primary factor which is going to lead to the cessation of our instabilities of the mind, the chaos of the mind. Shabd, Shabd, Shabd. Simran, Simran, Simran. A saint once said to me, son, if you hold on to a tree, ask yourself, are you holding on to the tree, or is the tree clinging on to you? Is the world clinging on to us, or through our focus are we clinging on to the world? God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you.